Okay, good afternoon here. Valerie Milano, the Hollywood Times senior editor and Aspiring Magazine, and I'm happy to have our guests here. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having us. I'm Tash Ann. I'm the writer and director of Nadine.
And I'm Chris Polzinski, producer and also sound mixer.
Great. All right. Thanks again. And congratulations on Nadine being featured at the 21st Annual La Femme International Film Festival.
Thanks.
Um, can you each tell us how you first became involved with this project and what drew you to it?
I'll start, I
Yeah.
guess. I wrote it. So I have loved old Hollywood like since I was a child. Like there's pictures of me dressed up like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz from when I was like 4. It's been a passion, like a lifelong passion of mine. And in my directing career, doing a lot of digital content, I was always doing things that were very modern and very dark and very like depressing and I just wanted to, I was looking for something to kind of showcase this other side of things that I want to do that like is, maybe still talking about serious issues, but in v bright, vibrant ways with like a little dancing, because who doesn't need a little dancing? But I wanted to talk about the ways that women are treated in Hollywood even today, and specifically like narrowing that down the ways that women are spoken about in behind their backs and the way women are spoken to. So I was really looking for a project that could tie in my love of old Hollywood, talk a little bit about that history, but also just kind of talk about the way we are still spoken to and about. So I started working on that script, and luckily my producer is also my husband. So
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
I brought him in and made him aware of it quite early, but I'll let him take over there.
Yeah, she had been talking about it for months as just like this idea that she had, and because it's so ingrained in who she is as a person, for these topics, for all of everything about the film, um, it kind of flowed out of her pretty easily once she just decided to start writing it. So we were on a plane, like a 5 hour plane ride, I think. And she's like, I'm just going to start writing this. Why not? And I'm like, cool, I'm going to take a nap. And she woke me up like 45 minutes later, said, I'm done. Can you read it? I'm like, okay. Uh, and it was awesome. And from that moment, I was hooked because it was such a great script from version one and not much changed throughout the entire script through producing it. So yeah, I was just excited to make it happen.
Tash, you've created award-winning work like Abstraction. How did your past projects, or did they influence this storytelling and direction of Nadine?
Yeah, I mean, they did definitely. I have in the past been used to kind of like playing it small and kind of working, not playing it small, but working within the parameters of like we don't have any budget and like how can I make not having any budget make sense for this story? And that's both in like self-funded work and in work that I've been hired to do that's lower budget. And in this one, when I wrote this and when I started the approach to it, and we both decided together let's write it as if money's not an issue, to a certain extent. Like we can't rebuild entire streets in like the dream would be like to have a full boulevard and have them go to Ciro's and like all of that fun stuff, but within reason to let the story dictate what's needed and not let the budget dictate what's needed, I think is the biggest thing that propelled me forward that makes this project different than my other projects.
Yeah, Nadine shines the light on the 1950s Hollywood and the dark side of the studio system. And you've talked a little bit about what inspired you to tell the story, and why through the lens of an aging starlet.
Uh-oh.
So talk a little bit more about Hollywood history and how it glamorizes that golden age, and talk a little bit about that and a little bit about Nadine and how it addresses the abuse and the
Absolutely.
control behind
So
the scenes.
yeah, the I mean the studio system especially, but like in general, the way media was set up back then and the way that the studio system played against the media kept it like a very firm control on these people's lives and like made it so that like it's not like a situation today where we've had like the Me Too movement and we've had all this stuff where people feel like they can speak out. People's careers were very much controlled by the studio that had signed them. Contracts were 7 years long, and if you refused to do a project, you were put on leave, and the time that you spent not on that project was added to the end of your contract. So theoretically, if you were like a problem child, they could just keep without like re-signing or renegotiating anything, extending your contract. A lot of these contracts that these I will say women, I focus on women, men as well had it, actors in general had it really tough. But women in particular, their contracts would say things about like they can't gain a pound or two in either direction. Studio gets approval over who they date. Studios get approval over where they're seen, like all of this stuff. And in a lot of cases, like as Judy Garland had a person she thought was a friend who was actually a spy who the studio was using to control her every move. She was like part of the PR department, and Judy thought it was her best friend, and it was like this woman who was just reporting back her every move. And that's the kind of stuff that these women were dealt with. But then the media went and did this like until like kind of 1952 and like Confidential started really taking over and like tabloids became a thing. Up to that point, the media ingrained this like vision of these women that their lives were perfect, that they were so like glamorous and wonderful and happy and they couldn't be happier, but they were being fed pills and they were,
Yeah.
you know, just worked like crazy and not paid, like things like residuals did not exist.
Yeah.
Back end did not exist. They were just paid their weekly stipend no matter what they did, no matter what star they were, and a lot of them died largely broke because of
Mhm.
it. And I think especially as time has gone on, we have this like idolized version of the most perfect moments of their lives when that's not at all, I mean, that's not at all what real life looks like for anybody,
Mm.
but like it really wasn't what real life looks like for them.
Like even one of Marilyn's last movie, the behind the scenes, which she even talks about how the meds that they're putting her on is making her feel sleepy,
Yeah,
and
I don't know if you've ever seen that. There's like a daily of it. Like if you just scrub the dailies of Something's Gotta Give that never came out, there's like a thing where she's like, I hate these meds, they make me so sleepy. And then she just stops and she just turns it on and does the scene.
yeah,
Oh,
nobody
no.
ever sees that.
So that's kind of like where the feeling behind it is.
Sure. Grace Caroline Curry gives such a layered performance. What made her the right fit for Nadine, and how did she shape the character's emotional journey? Talk about that.
It was written for Grace. We
Okay.
knew it was my husband, who's a wonderful producer, is also a wonderful sound mixer. And he did the sound on the movie Fall, which stars Grace. And because it was COVID time and they needed a bubble, I boom opped
Oh,
actually on Fall, and I was able to, like it was all of us, like maybe 20 people in the trenches in a COVID bubble in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And Grace and I bonded over her love of old Hollywood, my love of old Hollywood, um, and just stayed in touch. And
hey.
I knew what I watched her do on the set of Fall was nothing short of miraculous. Just the
Mhm.
like way in the heart frozen, so I'm gonna pause. Okay, there you go. She could snap in and out of it just so quickly and so well, and I knew she had been working since she was a child, and that's kind of where this character stems from. She talks about like, she's been doing this since she was 13, and Grace comes from an age where she was doing that even younger. She's been in this business her whole life. So I think she brought a lot of that to the character, but also she was very deep into research. We had like a running document that she started where we would put just interviews from people that we thought were interesting and had pieces of what we thought Nadine would be. And we really built her that way. I would say like we built her, but really Grace did,
Mhm.
the hardest bulk of that work. But we pulled from, like the tenderness of Marilyn like the hardness of Joan Crawford was kind of like uh the security blanket that she wore for a lot of the story.
Who did she say the her voice was modeled after? Was it a little bit of Audrey, a little bit of Marilyn?
It was really an amalgamation. She wanted to bring that like that it was still strong, but it was presenting strong and not necessarily like that it was naturally like self-assured. So yeah, we really built all the way around from the voice to the mannerisms to everything to just build upon the shoulders of all of these like wonderful misunderstood women.
Mhm. The film was crowdsourced and team driven. Chris, can you talk about how this collaboration production model worked and what challenges and surprises came with it?
Yeah, well, we knew we would need help from the get-go because it's not a cheap project to make.
Oh.
So we initially, very early on, reached out to a Kickstarter coach. His name is literally the Kickstarter guy. One of our friends had been using him before and said good things. So we went with him, paid a little bit down, and then he got a little bit on the back end. And, it wasn't too much of an investment comparative to what we needed for it. So, but he had just these great models of how fundraising works, what reaches out to specific people, what entices people to be passionate about the project, what words to use and phrases to not use and avoid. Um, so there was a lot of sales aspects that we learned in the process. We learned how we knew it would be difficult, but we didn't know how much legwork. It was so much legwork, and he told us, that you get out what you put into it, and we put a lot into it. I was going around. I did a woodworking raffle as part of it. So whoever donated with a certain QR code from the raffle flyers that I handed out would be put into a raffle drawing. And got, I think I made a cutting board and some coasters and just random things, just whatever I could do. We had a lot of weird little incentives, but. Uh, so yeah, it was a lot of work.
I think
Anything you,
if I
yeah, go
can
ahead.
add, I think the cool thing about Kickstarting and this process that we both found was that it built in a fan base for us before the project was even made.
Yeah, people were following it from day one, still following it ever since.
And it's like a unique experience because you normally don't people don't aren't normally aware, at least when I've done things that are like self-funded or like I'm hired to do them, people don't really know they exist until you're done and like you're presenting a thing. But since we crowdfunded, we came with like 425 built-in people who were invested, in seeing every step along the way. And I think that helped like when he was going in because we had to get discounts from so many people and like he was able to get Joseph of Hollywood as a sponsor, which is just unbelievable, and Besame Cosmetics and the studio had to give us a big deal. So like I think having a fan base built in that all has this passion for old Hollywood and stories about women and stuff, I think really helped you going forward with the deals you had to make.
Yeah, yeah. As far as that model is concerned, I think it definitely helps on the short content side of things.
Cinematographer George Sue brings a distinct visual style. How did you all approach recreating the feel of the 50s Hollywood while keeping the story modern and resonant?
Well, I know he was very particular about the color of it all. Definitely helped out with the color temperature of the lights that were practical in the set. Helped tell us which lights they would have used. George is a bit of a nerd like that, and we love him for it. So he did help us with what was in front of the camera and how it turned out in the final product.
Yeah, I will say as far as lighting, I think we only used things that could have been practically used at the time. In rare instances like the dressing room, I think we probably used some softbox lighting, but for everything on the stage lights,
Yeah, a
that
bunch of big moles up there.
same with the lenses. He was very particular. We used some vintage, lovely lenses that would have been used at the time. Obviously, we cannot afford to shoot on film, but he wanted to keep the lenses as true to form as possible.
Tash, directing actors in period pieces can be tricky. How did you guide performances so they felt authentic without falling into caricature?
We individually with all three of my main actors and then kind of all together on set had discussed the period of it all, the history of it all that we're bringing to these roles. But then in performance, we just worried about the human
Mm.
because I trusted them. They're all such seasoned actors, so wonderful to understand the period in which they're living without that being the prominent point of the scene that's happening. Because I think when like what you're talking about when the caricatures happen doing period piece, it's when the performance is dictated by presenting that period. And we, they were well researched enough to not to do strange mannerisms that wouldn't exist and to like leave it like that. But we also wanted to keep it feeling like I think when people fall into period, they won't like Michael says the F word like twice in this. But people like often fall into like, oh, you got to say like gosh golly darn
You're
instead
right.
or something. And it's like, no, 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 they still cursed. Like they were still humans. So I think like we just tried to know the period, but just exist as humans in the space instead of constantly thinking about the period once we had done our due diligence.
Screening at La Femme, a festival dedicated to amplifying women in film, feels especially meaningful for a story like this. What does this platform mean to you?
Oh gosh, I was so excited about getting this festival. All of my career, not to be like emotional, everything that I believed I could do is because I've seen women before me do it.
Mhm.
And so I love having work that is centered around the female experience in the industry. And I love getting to share that in a place where not only is that like accepted and expected of the work, but that it is in a position where it could potentially inspire someone else who's maybe not told a story like that before. And I think that can happen at any festival, really, but when one is set up specifically about supporting and empowering women, it's like a much more likely event that it might inspire somebody to tell their own story about how the industry has impacted them or how life has impacted them, because being a woman can be hard in many different facets.
Mhm. So, what kind of reactions are you hoping audiences will have, especially younger viewers who may not know the full history of the Hollywood studio system?
What do you think, Chris?
Oh, reactions that people would have? I don't know. Um, well, we've had some great reactions. We really like when in the theaters we've had people cheering at the climax. We want people to leave feeling empowered and inspired. Uh, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a drama. It's quite serious, but
Yeah.
like there are moments of levity, largely thanks to Michael Bunin, who's
We really wanted somebody with like a comedy background for the producer role to just not be all too serious.
But yeah, there's some cute moments to have like a little chuckle in it. It's heavy material. I just like to hear people engaging with it, honestly, in any facet. But yeah, I think like what Chris said, leaving feeling inspired to use your own voice,
Yeah.
I think is my main. That was the focus for me of the whole storytelling. Is I want people to feel more like it's okay to use your voice. It's okay to speak out on things you're passionate about.
Yeah, you talked about this earlier. The industry is still reckoning with the issues of control, power, and abuse today. And how do you see Nadine connecting to contemporary conversations like the Me Too? Talk a little bit more about that before we close.
Okay, I think in terms of Nadine and how it can translate into today's world, obviously the issues are different that women face now, but I think to me, the point of history and the point of understanding history and not just like forgetting that anything ever happened is that the key to changing the future is to understand the past and to understand that we exist in sort of this cyclical society where things will continue to come back around and almost like a pendulum. The further like towards progression we've gotten, the harder the backswing will be. And I think we're, currently in a backswing. Um, and I think especially in those times of backswing, it's important to go, oh, we've been here before. So what we can do is prepare for when it swings the other way. And by understanding like this is not new. Women are always spoken to this way. Here's like just, like it's not an instructional guide, Nadine, by any stretch of the imagination. But I think it is going like, oh, women were fighting back then. They can be fighting back now. And like we're in good company. Like, again, we're standing on the shoulders of these very brave women who got simplified down into basically caricatures of themselves.
I have a question, just one more for each of you. Chris, from a producing perspective, what excites you most about where Nadine might travel after La
Hmm.
Femme, whether other festivals, platforms, or development into a full series?
I mean, any festival, any door that it can get us into to talk to the right people, to get the right doors further to open is exciting. Any room that I can get into, to be honest, to talk to people is great. It doesn't have to be huge or small, it has to be the right one. We obviously want to take this into to be a limited series. We want it to be as big and well made as possible. Um, so anything that can get us to that happening is exciting to us. So
And Tash, what's next for you? I know you've hinted at expanding Nadine into a series. Can you share where you see it going?
Yeah, so we actually have a full pilot for the streaming. So this actually does function obviously as like a web series pilot, and we do have a build out that we don't really put forward that often about what it could look like in a web series format. But the what more excites us more is this streaming pilot that we have, which is like a 30-minute pilot for a limited series. I think it's like an 8 episode run. And we really love that because in the pilot version, in the streaming version, we expand on the way that like media was changing in the 50s with things like Confidential Magazine, where the studios really shifted from protecting their reputations of their stars to damaging the reputations of their stars for butts and seats. And I think like we couldn't even really get into that in the short version because it's such an overwhelmingly rich topic.
not a short way to that story.
So that's kind of where I want to go with it because I've been fascinated with like the rise of tabloid and like the like really human instinct to want to tear down people you perceive as like not that I want to, but like the overarching societal desire to see people who are more successful than you fail,
Mhm.
which is the thing that tabloids really started like feeding into, which was so odd. So really we want to build into a world where we tie all of the even more complex things that Nadine had on her plate and essentially kind of where the short is happens somewhere in the midway point of the streaming series and we start with her at a much less evolved place and we get to build in some more characters of her world and just really see not only how fascinating that world was, but how relevant it actually still is to our life today.
Yeah.
Lovely.
If you
So
want to have
tell,
I was just gonna say I have the log line for
What's okay?
the pilot here, but that's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
well, kind of speaking on that, tell our readers and our viewers, how can they find out more about you guys and more about the film? Social media or website or what?
Yeah, Instagram is meet underscore Nadine. And then I think it's meetnadine.com,
Yeah,
right?
website.
For the website. Um, I don't think we
Yeah.
have a email address just for that yet.
No,
But
but if you go to the website meetnadine.com, you can click on our digital EPK, which has kind of
yeah,
everything from every festival that we've gone to, all the stills from it, all the promos, behind the scenes content, all of that kind of stuff. is there if you click on it, and from there you can find how to contact us if you need to.
Yeah. We'll be
Um,
updating that regularly.
we'll be updating that as festivals come in, and yeah, we try really hard. In times where news is slow with Nadine on our Instagram, we try to share and post some fun history from the time as well.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you again for your time and the film. And we're the Hollywood Times dot today and aspiringmagazine.com. Our YouTube channel is the Hollywood Times Official. And hopefully we'll see you at the festival.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
look
I'll see
forward
you
to it.
there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you very
rest of your
much.
day.
You too.
You
All
too.
right.
Wait, bye.
Bye-bye.